Hello guys and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture I will explain what the transition can do and what properties can be set. So let's get started. First of all, I got here the box, and in here I got some basic style, right? So there's ID box and I target the ID in here, and it's just like width and height and the background color. So what we want to do now is add a hover effect, okay? So when we hover over the box, we want to do something. And to keep things simple, I will just change the width to 400 pixels. So it should be like 2 times wider. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, and it works just like that. But what you may notice is that there's no animation, right? It just kind of jumps right away, and it's ends. So what we want is just a smooth animation, right? Smooth grow. So what we want to do is define the transition property. So in order to do that, there are several properties that we can define. So when you write transition, in here you can see we can define delay, we can define duration, property, and timing function. So for now, let's define the duration, and it will be just basic. You can write in milliseconds or in seconds. So for example, I can just write 2 seconds like this. You can also use 2000 milliseconds like this and hit save. And let's see how it looks now. Okay, so as you can see, it's kind of smooth. It definitely look better. So the animation is there and it takes exactly 2 seconds. So that's the first property that we can define. We can make it like much faster. So this will only take 0.2 second. So let's see. This is much more dynamic kind of, but it still looks good. It's not the jump, right? So that's how you define the duration. So basically the time it takes to complete the transition, okay? Then what we can do is define a delay. So transition delay, and in here we can write something like 2 seconds. So what that means? Well, basically the transition will start after 2 seconds, after the time you put in here, okay? So when I hover over the box, it should take 2 seconds of nothing, and then it will grow, okay? So let's see, 1, 2, and then it will grow, okay? So yeah, that is pretty much, that's pretty cool, right? You can delay the animation, you can change it obviously. So yeah, that's delay. It delays the animation. And what we can do also is define the transition timing function. Okay, so what that is? Well, basically, if you look at this animation, it doesn't work. Yeah. Why it doesn't work? Well, that's weird. But when you look at the animation, it's not like linear. The growth starts slow, then it turns a bit faster, and then it grows. At the end, it's once again slow, right? It's slower. So you can, for example, define it linear. So that means it will be same all the time, right? So it will be just, I don't know why this isn't working. I can just reload it. Huh, that's definitely weird. Yeah, it works now. So there's the 2 seconds. I forgot about it. I'll change it to 0 so that we can see better. So right now it's linear, right? It's the speed of the box going to right is still the same, okay? But when I change it to, for example, ease out, at the end it will be kind of slower. So if I save it and reload the page, let's see, at the end it should be slower. So right, you may notice that from the beginning it kind of goes fast and then it slows down, right? So these are functions that define how how basically the speed of the animation at some time, right? So we can also use something called cubic Bezier function, like in here, they are predefined. So for example, if I pick the first one and save it, you can see that it's a bit different animation, right? So it goes really fast. So if I, for example, pick like another one I like, I believe that this one looks pretty cool. So let's save it and see. Okay, so it's a bit of a different. I'm not sure whether you can see the difference, but it's a bit different. So these are basically the timing function that defines how the speed of animation at the exact time point, right? So at the beginning and in the middle of the animation and in the end, okay? Then another thing that we can do is define the transition property. And that basically means that we define the property that can be transitioned. So if we, for example, say the transition property to none and hit save, there should be like no transition, okay? So it just jumps, okay? And if we set it to, for example, I don't know, 8. Okay, typo. And hit save. There's no animation, right? But if we, for example, in here define the height to 400 pixels, it should animate the height, but it won't animate the width. So let's see. Okay, you can see that the width just jumps, but the height goes slower. Once again, I will just slow down the animation to 2 seconds so you can see the difference. Right? So, and right now you can also see the difference of the timing function. So you may notice that it goes slow and then turns faster. Right? And if I change it to, for example, the linear, it should be same all the time. So let's take a look. Right? It still goes in the constant speed, right? So yeah. And if I define like transition property all, that's like default value. So that means this line is pretty much useless. It will transition both of these properties, right? But if I remove the line, it will also do the same. So like this. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this one. You know what the transition can do, what the transition properties can be, and how you can set them.